All right, glad we got everybody. My name is Adrian. I'll be our moderator for tonight's session. We also have Willow, who will be moderating the chat and getting questions for us from the audience. Glad to have you all here. Thank you so much for volunteering your time for this event. Yeah, so I think I can just run through kind of the way we're going to run things here. I'll start with introductions. So I'll introduce myself, then allow Willow to introduce herself, and then we'll go through our panelists one by one so everybody can give a quick introduction. Then we'll do a few quick introductory questions, just talking about like basic experience and things like that. And then I've got a list of questions that we can start to go through. And then as students start asking questions from the chat, Willow will pull those out and we will kind of go from there. So it should be all pretty easy, pretty smooth. If we have any difficulties with that, we can figure that out as we go. I think that should be everything. We'll just have to wait for Darren to wrap up his remarks, and then we should start getting students coming in. Anyone have any questions or anything else to mention before we get going? Perfect.
I just want to test my mic. Can you hear me?
Yep, 100%.
You can hear me too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the introduction, I guess if we can get just your name, your current job, company you're working for, and maybe the degree that you graduated with as well. It would be useful just so everyone's on the same page.
I guess maybe I'll go first. I'm moderating the chat, so I'm not speaking too much. But my name's Willow. I'm in my 5th year of a chemical engineering co-op degree, so I'll be graduating in a couple months. I'm the project manager of the University of Alberta EcoCar team. Some of you might have heard of that during your time at U Alberta.
Well, we can maybe just give a few minutes just for students, I think, to trickle in, and then we can go from there if that works for you.
Yes, totally. I thought we were introducing ourselves to each other, not everyone.
No, all good. Yeah, we might as well just do it all at once with the students. Sorry, that was my bad. I should have made them more clear.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. All right, welcome to everybody who I see joining. We will give it a few minutes for everybody to settle down in a room, and then we'll take it away from there. One second, I'm just going to go and check on something real quick, and I'll be right back. All right, looks like they have wrapped up on the main stage, so we're going to get going here. Welcome, everybody, to the Electrical and Computer Engineering Room B, Energy and Consulting Room of this event between NGAC and ESS. Thank you all for coming. We're very glad to have you here to witness this panel. Before we get into some introductions, just so everybody's familiar, because Hopin is a bit of a new platform, I know, for everybody. You started at the stage, you're into the sessions. I will let you know that there are a couple of additional features here on Hopin that you can see on the left kind of taskbar on your screen. The first is networking, where you can go and meet different people at the conference, potentially after you're done with your panel. And there is also Expo there, where there are some short videos from different engineering student groups, from the ESS, from NGAC, from that type of stuff. So let's get into some introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Adrian Watomaniuk. I'm in the second year of my electrical engineering co-op degree here at the U of A. Additionally, I am the Engineering Student Society's Vice President, Academics and Services. So yeah, that's how I got involved in this event. I'll pass it over to our tech moderator, Willow, to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Willow. I'll be monitoring the chat for any questions that you have, so feel free at any point to put your questions in, and then when we have an opportunity, I will read those out and we can have our panelists answer them. I'm in my 5th year of a chemical engineering co-op degree, so I'll be graduating in April, and I'm the project manager of the University of Alberta EcoCar team, which is an undergraduate student team that designs and builds hydrogen fuel cell powered cars.
Thank you, Willow. And I just saw your question, Michael. Yep, your degree, current job is perfect. So let's go and introduce our panelists here. So maybe let's start with Michael then.
Okay, you can hear me here? So I graduated in 2008 from electrical engineering, and my current job is a digital power systems engineer at BBA.
Perfect, thank you. Maybe we'll go to Janelle.
Hello, I work at ATCO in the natural gas division, and I graduated in 2010, I think. And I'm an engineering specialist with that group, and I work on sort of automating and trying to find better ways to do pipeline simulations and work with the information and data we have. And I have a degree in electrical engineering.
Awesome, thank you. Let's move to Kari.
Hi, I'm Kari Blyth. I got my electrical engineering degree in '96, so much earlier than a lot of you, and kind of went through the ranks of different jobs, and now I'm the director for the office here in Edmonton for BBA Engineering.
Perfect, and finally, Sahar.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sahar. I graduated from the U of A in, I guess, 2020, just last year. I also got a degree in electrical engineering, and I did the co-op program. And I currently work for TELUS as a technology specialist.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you once again to all of our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us tonight. So we're going to start off with just some rough introductory questions just to get to know our panelists a little bit better. So the first one is going to be, tell us about your University of Alberta experience and maybe give us a bit of a description and some insight into your current job. So maybe we can go with the same order as last time for this question.
So U of A was quite different for me. So I came from Grand Prairie Regional College, so it was a transition year. So I had to meet everybody new, but overall the experience was quite welcoming. To be honest, I actually registered for mechanical from peer pressure, but realized that, I had interest in electrical ever since I was a young child. I electrocuted myself when I was a year and a half old. My parents told me that I stuck a key in an electrical socket, and that's pretty much why I've been doing electrical. I'd say the experience at U of A it's probably one of the better programs that I've remembered, and then definitely when we interview people, I look for the U of A, the graduates. So my current job, I've introduced myself as a digital power systems engineer, and some of you guys will say, well, what does that really mean? I think the key there is its power. So, for any of you guys that I think take courses with Wilson Shu, I'm really a engineer that designs like power systems for the power that comes to your home, how to make that reliable, how do we make the grid stable, how do we do studies, and my main focus is, protection and control, and that involves designing control systems, programming them, studying the system, and implementing settings that go in, and then further taking some of that information into like a system operator. So I do deal with SCADA and telecommunication. So that's what I do. Does that answer the first question okay?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Janelle, you can go ahead.
Hello. My U of A experience was, it was great. It was a lot of experience all at once, I guess. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years since I graduated. The program, both seemed like it went by instantaneously and also dragged on for a really long time, depending on how many homework assignments were due. But overall, I quite enjoyed the program, especially once it got into the third and fourth year, and you could you start picking your technical electives and really get into stuff that you were interested in. As I said earlier, I'm an engineering specialist at ATCO. Previously to that, I've spent the past 9 years also at ATCO in the electronics and instrumentation group. And that was a lot of SCADA cabinets, transmitters, all sorts of measurement in the field for keeping gas coming to everyone's house in Alberta. And so I was always on the transmission side. So it was a lot of high pressure stations with control and compressors, and a lot of fun equipment to interface with the PLCs that I got to program. And my current job is I'm working with the planning group at ATCO, and I am working to add a little bit more automation into the workflows and bring it sort of up to speed with the rest of technology, the way the world's going. So it's quite, I'm quite excited about it. I've been in it for, I started just when the pandemic started, and so I've never really been in the office for my job. But it's been great so far, and it's just every day I get to learn something new, and I love it.
Thank you so much. That's great to hear. Kari.
Hi, Kari. As I mentioned there before, I'm with BBA. My university career in itself was, I think, similar to Janelle's. There were some days that you wish the day would be over, and there was other days that you just wish it would keep on going. So had a lot of great experiences, made a lot of great friendships, and they say work hard and play hard, and it certainly kind of how the degree went, but it's been a rewarding experience for sure. In terms of work, my job, in terms of my career, it's been kind of split in two. So one role has been like owner's engineer. So I was at Syncrude for quite a few years. And then the second part of it really has been in the consulting side of things. So now it's kind of flipped, and I'm back working, doing projects for people like Syncrude or companies like Syncrude and Suncors and some of the utilities. So it's it's been a lot of fun. I luckily I get to work with Mike, and so I've done some of the similar things that Mike has done as well. I started in P&C, but obviously since I'm a bit older, not with all of the new and fun stuff that Mike plays with right now. As the director in the office, it takes me away from some of the hands-on stuff. I still get to play a little bit for sure, but not as often. So we have a team that is diverse in the office, so it's great for me. I get to learn a lot of different things and understand a lot of different problems that each of the different disciplines go through. So probably in the later part of my career now, it's been more about kind of diversification out of electrical, and I get to be educated by my own staff in terms of how things work and some of the challenges they have and some of the great solutions they come up with. So that's about it.
That's great to hear. And finally, we'll move on to Sahar.
Hi, okay, so my experience at the U of A, it was good. It's pretty standard, I guess, except for the end when the pandemic happened and everything got weird all of a sudden. But like I said, I did the co-op program, so I had one work term actually, funnily enough, in Janelle's group at ATCO. So small world, we worked together. And then I had another work term at Alta Steel. I was also part of the diversity and engineering group when I was there, and big recommend, definitely check it out. It's a great group. And now at TELUS, I'm on the team that does QA testing or quality assurance testing for like all the equipment that you would have in your house. So like the modems, if you have booths, if you have a network access hub, anything like that needs to be rigorously tested. So that's what we do.
It's great to hear. I think we can all relate to the weirdness of COVID pandemic, whether you're in industry right now or in school or whatever. It's hitting us all. So well, that's good to hear. Thank you all for sharing your experience. So I guess kind of tying into that, we have a fair amount of current students here, kind of across all years, who still have time. So I guess the question would be, if you could go back and change one thing throughout your university engineering career, is there something that you would go back and change? Maybe we'll go backwards this time. So let's go to Sahar first.
Yeah, I think one thing that I kind of regret about my university degree is I wish I'd had better stress management techniques going through it. Still something that I'm working on. It's very difficult, but definitely better than I used to be. So I wish I could have managed that a little bit better for my mental health. And I also wish that I would have gotten involved in groups that are like that I'm passionate about. So like, for example, sustainability. I wish I had like joined some groups relating to that. I think it would have helped maybe transitioning into a role after my degree that was more related to something that you're like super passionate about, if you know what I mean. Not that I don't like my job now, I do, but yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And subtle plug in that expo section after a panel, you can go and check out all the lovely student groups and maybe find something that you'd be interested in. But no, thank you very much. Let's move maybe to Kari.
Thanks. I don't know. I don't think I would have changed a lot. I enjoyed the experience. I mean, it certainly could be stressful at times for sure. But I think the one thing that I found a bit of a challenge is that you focus so much on getting the assignments done and getting them in that you don't always understand what you're learning. And I think if there was anything I could do better, it would have been trying to understand how what I was learning maybe applied to the real world. But I think some of that has to do with the program as well. And maybe I wasn't fortunate enough to do the co-op program. I just did summer work terms, but maybe the co-op would have been better to kind of demonstrate how the real world and what you're learning kind of have some bit of alignment. But no, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to Janelle.
Mine's very similar as well. I was a total hermit, and so COVID's great for me, but in school it wasn't so great. So I wish I would have joined more student groups. So there was ton that always interested me. I just never took the plunge, like the space elevator and then the Formula One car, and just anything with interesting electronics was right up my alley. And so I think going back, I'd try and break out of my little hermit hole and do some more clubs.
think that's a good theme to hit on, because even applying for jobs and things like that, I've noticed that's something that a lot of companies like to see people taking the initiative to do that type of thing and to find things that they enjoy. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And finally, let's move on to Michael.
So anything that I would change, I'll tell you, I didn't drink coffee for the first 22 years. Some more random facts about me, but I wish I drank more coffee. Then I did manage to join the Formula SAE club, and I did do a Dean's Research program also when I was at the U of A. So, for things that I would change for people is definitely get out, meet people. Myself, even though I've done some of that, I still hermited it at times, but definitely networking. And from a piece of advice, I would say from after graduating, so I worked at ATCO too, and the hands-on experience is really what engineers lack. There's engineers and technologists, and later on, I think as you go through the career path, you'll learn there's a feud between the two, and then they always think engineers are just really good with paper and nothing other than paper. So I'd say the labs definitely pay off, and pay attention, and if you got time, definitely make sure you get your learnings out of that. So.
Perfect. All right. So that kind of wraps up our introductory questions. Just a reminder to everybody that you are free to throw any questions that you have for the panelists in the chat, and we'll keep an eye out for that. But for now, we'll kind of move in, and I'll toss it to the panelists to see if anybody wants to speak on those. But I guess first of all, Kari, you mentioned not doing co-op. So one of our questions that we have here is for those who didn't do co-op, how did you find kind of jobs? How did you find things without the experience? Or if you did like summer internships, what was your kind of approach to finding those? And is there anything that you can do to kind of add experience to your resume, even if you haven't done something like a formal co-op position? So maybe we'll start with Kari and then see if anybody else wants to jump in on that one.
Sure. Thanks. I mean, we were fortunate in that at the university they had a group that kind of brought in a number of the different companies. So you would be applying for jobs through that. I think it is important to try and get yourself a position in your discipline to some degree, so that you at least are demonstrating that you're, like I said before, I think it's important to understand what you're learning and the relationship to the field that you want to go into. So for me, it was, working just through through the group in terms of the applications that the applicants they were looking for. Obviously, if that isn't successful, then I mean you have to find different ways to reach out to employers. But kind of touching on what Mike said is that really networking is probably one of the most important things. So if you can't find a job, then maybe it's volunteering to help a group that's in an interest that you might have, because you'll likely, if that's the case, you'll probably find people of like interests and like minds, and they may be doing roles or professions similar to what you might want to be doing. So if it doesn't go the way you think, just keep getting yourself out there and getting to meet people and put yourself in different situations, because you never know who you'll meet and when you'll meet them.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any other panelists who wanted to maybe chime in on that one?
I can add a bit to that. So I've also did the traditional program. I didn't go through the co-op, and I'm not even sure what was going through my mind, but I graduated in 2008, which was the worst time. My summers were quite difficult in finding jobs. Most of the time, co-ops were taken already. So I took a simple job at a lighting manufacturing, and then we would design and build, and I learned to work with my hands at that time to operate a CNC equipment, and then build some lights that would go in a commercial setting. So going along the lines of Kari, like if you're trying to find a job, at least find a job that will give you some aspect of what you've learned in school. That could be a simple stepping stone to the next career. And the other part about networking is, you know, I'm sure most of people have heard of ESSC. So you don't necessarily have to network within, you know, let's say a professional society. You could do that. And actually, I found my job working with Kari through actually one of my colleagues who left the company at ATCO, and then, you know, we just met at ESSC and said there was a position here. So you never know who you'll meet in one of those in those aspects. So just one thing to keep in mind for is your next job could be around the corner when you least expect it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's some really, really solid advice. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. Do you maybe want to toss it over to Willow to ask a couple of those?
Yeah, so we have first up from Ethan, what qualities or interests make for good electrical engineers? So I guess I will direct that at anyone who wants to speak up to it. Maybe I'll pick someone to go first. Janelle, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think definitely not specific to electrical. It's just really all engineers and anyone in a technical field or a field where they're tasked at solving problems is the skill to ask questions and listen, and then be able to take a step back and see the big picture and realize, okay, this is what they said the problem was. This is the information they've given me, and make the connections of maybe this is their real problem over here, and just sort of always being able to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of what's actually trying to be accomplished versus someone coming to you saying, I want to solve problem X. Is problem X necessarily what you want to solve, or is it something else? And I guess qualities or interests I honestly, I love talking to people who are passionate about any sort of niche thing and just learning all about it and seeing their enthusiasm and excitement and seeing their faces light up when they're explaining some nuanced thing of their hobby. And just really, there's no interest that will, I guess, set you apart. It's just showing that you want to learn and you want to apply problem solving outside of work too. I think is a big thing for me.
Thanks, Janelle.
I think I'd like to add to what Janelle said a little bit. She was talking about, you know, somebody comes to you with problem X, and I agree with her 100%, is that often people will come to you with a problem and they think they have the solution. And your job as a problem solver is not really to solve the problem. That's really that's the easy part of your job. The important part is to listen to them and to say, because they'll tell you many things in the conversation. The more you listen and the more questions you ask, they'll truly tell you what the problem is if you're listening to them. If you just go directly to the solution, you often will provide them something, and then at the end they'll go, but that's not what I wanted. That didn't fix my problem. But had you spent the time up front to have the conversation and listen to them, you would have realized that, you know, sure, the problem X they came to you with is, you know, similar to what they want, but really the underlying problem was much bigger, or it was different, and that was how it displayed itself. And so I think that is a key thing, is to listen and kind of absorb. And I think Mike talked about it earlier. It's you know, just when you're in the moment, you can learn from so many different people. So when you're in the field, you'll have technicians, you'll have technologists, you'll have engineers, you'll have operators, and every one of them is going to have a different experience, and they're going to have seen a different problem. So if you listen to all those people, all those different individuals, you can take that information, and that's when you truly become a real problem solver. So I think in terms of traits, it's being able to listen, it's being able to learn from anybody, and another key one, because that's once people know you, they can say, oh, that's how this person behaves. But in terms of resumes, I think you need to identify, you know, those things that you're passionate about, or you just need to show that that there's more to you than a GPA.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're going to be having conversations all day long, and you're going to be, to try and solve that problem, you have to engage with many different people, many different backgrounds, many different experiences. And so if you can just put yourself out there and absorb what people are willing to give you, you'll be very successful.
Just to add to that with the resume bit, is when we're looking through a stack of resumes, it's already being filtered from HR usually. And it's all, you know, it's all very similar experience. They've worked at an oil and gas company or something in Alberta. They have a few years experience here and there. It all looks the same. And I really enjoy seeing what people are willing to put on their resumes that like defines them, and sort of, well, oh, you decided to put your hobbies and interests on, or you decided to put clubs you're passionate about, or anything like that is really what to me sets a resume apart, which is sort of a loaded thing, because every company and every person looking at resumes will tell you this is the way you should do your resume. But at the end of the day, make your resume represent you and be hired for who you are.
See, we've got one more question in the chat, but before we jump to that one, I do have a bit of a kind of segue question here that I've heard a lot, and I think with a lot of students in the chat, I think this would be a good one to answer. From an employer's point of view, do you care about GPA, or do you think employers care about GPA whatsoever?
I don't think I would have been hired for my first job if they did. I sometimes just feel they forgot to ask in the interview and I never brought it up again.
As an employer, I don't care. I mean, I think it always depends on the type of job that you're doing. In some cases, maybe that's more important, but I think generally, I don't think GPA is a key part of finding your first job or your last job.
I might just jump in. I don't know. I've never hired anyone before, so I don't know. But I think it really depends on the situation. And I've like definitely seen jobs before, but they're usually in academia where they'll say like minimum GPA to apply, or like if you're going to pursue your master's or something like that, that's usually more when it comes into play than I think like out in industry.
I think those are all really good points, good perspectives, and maybe some reassurance for people watching this panel. So that's good to hear. I'll toss it back to Willow for one more question from the chat.
For sure, yeah. There's one more question in the chat as how do you find a mentor? So I guess maybe we'll start with Michael, if that's okay.
So I was fortunate enough to join the ATCO E.I.T program, which kind of set me up to have a mentor. But let's say right now, if you were a new graduate, or how would you go about finding a mentor? And that's quite a tough question, because without networking and knowing somebody that what type of job you're going to try to do, you can't really have a mentor. So I would say the first step is, if you have a job already, is seeking out that person that has that experience that you look up to, that's easy to talk to. And that mentor is really there to guide you through some of the problems, like stress management, or am I getting that right type of experience? Now, if you're in a academic situation where you're looking for a mentor, I would say definitely start networking, and picking up some of like the IEEE sessions, and then networking with industry professionals, making sure you're knowing like your extracurriculars, what you do. Then eventually you'll find somebody that has that. And then if you're in the co-op program, definitely make sure you use that time, because during the co-op terms, they're really trying to get to know you as a person in hopes that it's a good fit, and then eventually give you a job offer. And I believe even APEGA has some outreach programs as well, where they will bring volunteers from APEGA to mentor students or people that are looking for, further mentoring or even coaching, career path, resumes, or even interview skills. So it really depends what you're looking for. But yeah, it all starts with networking and not hermiting, not staying at home, even though that's against the COVID pandemic thing, but it's really making sure you're out there and you make yourself heard. So that GPA will not save you in this point.
Real quick and say that APEGA does have a really solid mentorship program. Additionally, the ESS offers one particularly for first and second year students if you're looking for some mentoring kind of through your upper years of engineering. And we do bring in industry professionals, things like that as well. So all things to check out. But yeah, I think the networking thing is huge as well, to try and find someone you can really connect with, that you enjoy listening to, and that type of thing, for sure.
I think that's a good point. I mean, everybody's mentor is different. A mentor for me would not be necessarily work for Sahar. So I think that's where it's important as a new grad, is to, ask questions about what you're doing, and you'll probably see, just like once we get back in the office, if that's the case, you'll see the dynamics, and you'll see people. I mean, some people are just naturally better at being mentors as well. So even though programs may be established, there's somebody that may not be in a program, and you might find you guys really click, and you can learn a lot from them. And so you just take advantage of that. It never doesn't have to be formalized. You just have to ask questions, be inquisitive, and you'll find somebody.
Yeah, I think those are really interesting points. So kind of talking about networking, getting jobs, of course, a particularly pressing issue, and I particularly want to hear Sahar's response to this, because you graduated in spring of 2020, which was quite an interesting time. I've heard plenty of horror stories from people in your graduating class. So do you maybe have any advice for students who are potentially graduating this year, are looking for co-op jobs and things like that, for potential ways to network and just generally career-seeking advice amidst COVID-19?
I would say don't give up is probably my biggest piece of advice. There's like, I don't know, at this point it's kind of like a numbers game. Like there's so many people and there's only so many jobs. So you just got to keep sending out those resumes. I think I sent upwards of 60 resumes out before I even started getting hits back. So it's not our it's definitely, the market is on the side of the employer, not the person looking for the job right now. So yes, try to stay motivated would be my biggest piece of advice. Now, ways that you can get out there. I like to try to say yes to everything that I can within reason. Opportunities will present themselves, especially if you're looking for them. For example, this event is why I'm here. It's just good to get out there and try new things. I think that really helps with kind of building your network and getting out of your shell. Because I also, if I followed my my natural intuition, I would never talk to anyone, and I would never do things like this. So it's just good to challenge yourself, I guess. And I think it really helps to meet new people. And when your name is out there, then you can build your network.
Thanks, Sahar. Maybe actually, can I extend that question a little bit? Because Michael, you mentioned you graduated in 2008, where there was also a bit of a economic crisis going on. So it might not be exactly the same as it is now, but similar kind of challenging conditions. Did you have other strategies that helped you kind of overcome that?
I was fortunate enough in my fourth year to get quite a few number of job offers. I wasn't sure what it was, but But my summertime was definitely more difficult because I mentioned I did the traditional program. And I would side towards, don't let your hobbies or, your interests speak for themselves. Like I know, so before I even, went into electrical engineering, I had a very strong interest in building computers. That's actually some of my earlier jobs that sparked my interest in, I did the CNC thing with the light building, is finding those jobs that still that helps your resume. And, if you still have those hobbies, some of those employers are looking for them. And there's a saying that, my mom taught me a long time ago, you can ride a cow to find a horse. So even though you're kind of going slower in that direction, at least you're going in the right direction. And part of my thing is you have the big picture in mind, even if it takes a little bit longer for you to get that first small step, it's really breaking down that barrier. And so yeah, even though it was a challenging year, I had opportunities, and I think it was maybe because I took some of those smaller steps at the very beginning, even though they were challenging. I definitely took jobs on, for example, like the dean's research. I took that one on at the school just so that I could build my resume. I didn't get paid for it, so I would seek out volunteer activities that would help build your resume and get your name out there. And that's something I would look for. Yeah.
I know for me, that's always been one of my favorite things about electrical engineering as well, is that you have the benefit of, like, particularly if you're into electronics and that type of thing, is you can buy stuff on Amazon and have it shipped to your house these days, especially particularly easily. YouTube and things like that is a great resource for building hobbies and building that kind of stuff on your own, especially when you've got nothing better to do at home, is always a good time. But yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, did anybody else want to speak on that before we move on to a different question? All right, let's see here. Just for anybody, I've noticed that people have been joining the chat as well. If you do have any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat, and we will be happy to throw them over to the panel here. So I guess kind of branching off a little bit into the wonderful world of electrical engineering, what are some of the more important, like, technical skills that you've noticed in your line of work, things that maybe employers are looking for, things that you found particularly useful? It could be software, it could be hands-on, it could be anything like that. And I'll toss this to anybody who wants to comment on it.
Just the willingness to learn. There's so many jobs that are, it's such a niche little sphere of knowledge to do that job. And as long as you go in open-minded and ready to learn and ready to ask questions, and you don't feel, or it doesn't seem like you're burdened by like having to learn this new thing. It's like just getting involved with the work and showing that you care. There's not really, if for just in general, there's not really one skill that would, like, oh, guarantee a job. It's just for sure showing that you want to learn and you're ready to learn, because every company has their own standards. You're going to have to learn anyways.
I would second that and just say, the best skill, and this may answer that some of the other questions, is engineering really prepares you to be a really good problem solver. But the one thing engineering does not prepare you for is, how to deal with the people. Soft skills is definitely one thing that you'll learn. Solving the problem is like getting the right answer on the exam. You're very happy to get it, but that's the most simplest problem you'll ever get. Most of the problems we deal with right now are, people related problems, budget related problems or schedule. Like it has very little technical I'll tell everybody here that you'll never have to do a double integral or, you know, a partial differential equation, even though I'm writing some calculation sheets on that to prove some CT saturation right now, you know, just to make my job easier. But that's not a normal thing that I would do every day. So, you know, everything that you learn from school is more so there we're really looking for your work ethic and your ability to find a solution, or, you know, how to go about dealing with the problem. That answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you. So kind of branching off from that a little bit, and I've mentioned the COVID pandemic, so obviously it's a pressing issue, but I think more generally, a lot of people are worried about the economic place that Alberta in particular is in these days. Maybe not so much for the electrical field, but it definitely hits all of us. So I was just wondering, maybe anybody has any particular answers on this, but where do you feel the future of engineering in Alberta is kind of heading? Are there any particular industries that, you know, students, new grads, that type of thing should be looking out for? Anything that you found particularly interesting or exciting?
I think just no matter what you do, mechanical, civil, electrical, is being above computer literate these days is quite important and can make you stand out with employers when your coworker did 3 sheets and you wrote a script to do 100 sheets. You know, that kind of stuff stands out, and that's where the world's heading is automation and finding faster, more efficient ways to do stuff. And so, yeah. If you're looking for something to do during the pandemic, pick up a coding course, and, you know, just be able to, even being able to do something simple, it can really help in your day-to-day work.
I'll give an example of that one. So for everyone that's been doing the first year program of the C++ programming, my second job at ATCO was to integrate metering data, which is just a whole bunch of raw data, into a simulation model for SIME. And I automated that in C++ with something that I never thought I would ever use. But, you know, my manager came and said, you know, you just took in 3 people's jobs, like co-op students, out of the picture for next year. And I said, well, I didn't really want to do that, but hopefully we could, you know, still use this program. And it's still being used there today, and they've improved on it. But the coding aspect that's one thing, you know, engineers need to know a little bit more. It's not just the electrical theory, it's every platform, every vendor has its own knickknacks, and the more you've done it, I would say it makes you more like a more well-rounded engineer to do things more cost effectively. In this challenging environment, you know, everybody wants something done faster, cheaper, better, and the only way to do it is to automate it. And we haven't even touched, you know, artificial intelligence and machine learning, but that is definitely on the forefront coming. And how does, in order to stay ahead of it, I would say there still has to be some human aspect into it. Yeah.
Just to touch on some of those points is that we maybe don't know where we're going. I mean, this is something we've never seen before. Nobody's experienced and had to come out of. So we don't necessarily know what the end game looks like. But we know that we're talented enough and smart enough to get to the end game. And so, again, as a new student, I think you just have to come out with the energy to try and figure it out, to try the different things. If it's the programming, the automating, that certainly, you know, from a financial perspective, definitely makes you certainly successful. But another key thing is that not every job you do is going to be sexy. It's not always going to be the glory job. And so you may find out that you do this job that you think is, below you or below your abilities. You might find out that the person that you work beside, maybe their dad owns a company, doing something different, or, they're actually somebody that just doesn't like to be in the limelight, but they're very, very bright. And so they might teach you something different. So I think because the world is unknown, we have to, follow. We may say that this is the industry that's coming in terms of the AI, and obviously there's the green energy and the renewables. There's a lot of different things that people are thinking about right now because we don't know where we're going. But find something that you enjoy, and as long as you enjoy it, you'll spend the time to get better at it, and the more you invest in it and improve yourself, the more marketable you are all the time, and the more you'll continue to stay engaged in whatever career you do choose to do.
Perfect. All right, so we're about halfway through the time we have allotted. I think I'll give everybody a quick break here. If anybody needs to go to the washroom, grab some water. I think we'll give it 5 minutes. We'll come back at 6:15, and then we'll go from there if that works for everybody. And in the meantime, students, if you have any additional questions or anything, feel free to throw those in the chat, and we can look at addressing some of those right when we get back. All right, see everyone in 5 minutes. Alrighty, looks like we've got everybody back. So I've got a bit of on here. So I'm sure we've all at one point or another run into, engineering being a very busy program. Potentially, we might be known as being hermits, for better or for worse. So the question is, like, how did your social life change, or just your personal life change after graduating? Did you notice a distinct difference between when you were in school to when you kind of got your first job and got out of school? Again, just anybody who wants to answer that one.
I mean, for me, I've been way more isolated since I graduated. So that was mostly just because of the pandemic. But I do think that once hopefully we can go to the office and stuff, like I'm really excited to meet all my teammates that I'm working with, and some of them I don't even know what they look like still, and like it's gonna be fun to do those like Friday afternoon beers with the team and all that kind of stuff. So I think, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is it sucks right now after graduating, but that's just because of the way that things are. But I think there still are lots of opportunities to meet new people and keep up your social life after graduation as well.
Just to add a bit to that, so I think with after graduation, there's kind of less stress, that there's no looming, 4 assignments a week, 3 labs a week, or, your capstone project, what you guys are trying to do. Definitely, I would say, after graduating and then getting the job, you definitely have some financial means to do something. I definitely took on some hobbies, and took on some sports at that time. Definitely brought my social life together, and would also increase your networking capability, I would say. So definitely, it's all a plus after you get that degree.
I'd have to agree. Once the nightmares about missing a test stopped after I graduated, then start to relax, and just it was nice to think, oh, it's the weekend. I don't have to do anything. I can do something I want to do. Yeah, that was a really nice feeling.
Awesome. That's great to hear. So I guess kind of maybe tying into that a little bit. So we've talked about kind of some different aspects of the field, and we've got people from kind of across the different opportunities that are available for electrical engineering here in Alberta. So I guess kind of a question, maybe for people who weren't totally positive about going into something like electrical engineering right at the top. What do you feel like the flexibility is kind of between fields? So if you come in, as an electrical engineer, how easy would you say it is to move into something kind of adjacent, something like potentially computer, or let's say you did focus more on electronics in your degree and you wanted to go into power afterwards, or potentially even move into management? I guess the question overall would be like, what type of flexibility is there for you to move into kind of different aspects of the fields that you're involved in, and that type of thing? Maybe Kari, because I know you've been involved in management and that type of thing. Maybe you want to speak on that first.
Sure. I've always said, I think if you're not sure what you want to do after you get out of school and you have any math or science ability at all, engineering is probably one of the best degrees to get. There's a significant amount of flexibility just in terms of the opportunities before you even graduate. I know I applied for one job, I think it was with ESO, and it was more along the lines of finance. And right in the interview, I said, well, why are you looking for engineers? Because I specifically asked for engineers. And they said, because you guys can solve problems. I can give you the problem and you can come up with the solution. And so it doesn't matter what the problem is. Engineers always want to find a solution. And so what that means is you can do most any job. As you do jobs, for sure, you can move really easily in the start of your career, for sure, because One bit of experience just often supports or can kind of compound into something else that you want to do. As you get to a certain stage, you start to do, then becomes more of a financial decision as well as a career decision. So you can certainly always change. There's never a point, I don't think, where you can ever change careers. However, there may be a financial implication in doing that. And as long as you're okay with that, I don't believe there's any limitation. And I know many people that have engineering degrees that do, that are entrepreneurs and have their own businesses in terms of building homes, or so again, it's more about your ability to be able to solve the problem. And because you've been trained to do that, it's really up to you to decide what the career is that you want, and just be open to the opportunities, and you can do anything really.
I'll speak to it from a different perspective. If you are in a career right now where you're looking at, becoming a professional engineer and stamping and authenticating, there is no way that, you can just say, well, I'm going to be this type of engineer and I'm going to start authenticating. That's just kind of against the rules. You haven't had enough areas of practice. But at any point, as a electrical engineer, you could say, well, I'm not really interested in this part of, let's say I would like to go into microwave technology. So then, if an employer is willing to, invest in you, which is, as Kari was saying, taking the salary pay cut, eventually, if you're 12 years or, 10 career, you can't expect the same salary that you would first get as a 1 to 2 year E.I.T. So if you're willing to learn, again, I think if you can show that, you can definitely change at any point. So whether it be nanotechnology, you want to build electric vehicles, or you wanted to go do something completely different, it's really that mindset. The only time I'd say that as engineers, they can pretty much switch laterally across is you're not doing enough of the technical, you're just doing project management. And at that point, it just becomes managing a project, and that's just another beast of its own, but it doesn't involve too much of the technical skills because you'll have the technical support from other individuals that'll help you.
I think that's a good point, Mike, too. There's a lot of different avenues you can take. And obviously, if you want to become a specialist in terms of a technical field, you have to put the time in to get there and develop. So you would have to continue in that stream. So there's some people that are definite specialists, and they're sought out because they are. And then there's others that become kind of like a jack of all trades, and so they have a good understanding of a number of aspects, but rely on those specialists to give them the solid technical details to be able to work the solutions. So again, there's a lot of options, and the hardest part is figuring out which one you want.
Slightly related question. For, I guess, all of you, was there any point that you kind of second guessed the path that you were on in your career? And if so, how did you deal with that?
Yes. Take a step back and see why you're there. I like lists, so I write stuff down, and like, what's keeping me there? What do I feel that's missing? What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? What am I passionate about? And just, I think it's always okay to take a step back and sort of reassess your situation and see, is this where you want to be now that you've learned? Because you're always growing, you're always changing. You 2 years from now will have completely different priorities than you now. hopefully it's because the pandemic's over and you're not trying to fight for toilet paper anymore, but everyone changes.
The oldest one here, I still don't know what I want to do. I still struggle on a, continually. I'm like, okay, I tried this. It's new. It's different. I learned a lot of new things. I like this part of the job. I didn't like as much this part of the job because there's always good and bad with every job you do, and as a general rule. And for me, it's more about just kind of looking at the opportunity and, saying, okay, what are the things there that I think are the most exciting? And what are the things there that I think are going to be the most challenging for me? And challenging can be challenging in that I don't ever want to do it, or challenging can be it's going to make me a better engineer or a better manager or whatever that is. And I just pick a couple, and for me, I kind of go with my gut. And I know at the end of the day, as long as I've done the best job that I can, there's always another door. And so I may be there for a little bit, and it may be a little bit longer than I want, but as long as I've done a good job and I've learned what I can from that one, there'll be another one somewhere along the road, and then I'll just have to make the same decision at that point.
Yeah, I'm kind of just starting out in my career, so I don't know if this question applies as much to me, but I did have a little existential crisis as I was graduating and trying to decide what I wanted to do once I was graduating, what jobs I wanted to apply for, and um, it's scary when you don't know. Like I knew I wanted to help people, but like, how do I do that with engineering? I was doubting all the decisions I've ever made in my entire life. I guess how you deal with that is yeah, as Kari was saying, you just got to remember that no decision has to be permanent. If you're not happy with whatever you're doing, you can change it. Like, just follow your heart, I guess.
Awesome. All right. I think those are some really good answers, and I'm sure we've all hit that even in school where you're in a course that you might not have any interest in at all and start questioning that, especially in engineering when it can be particularly difficult. But I guess kind of pulling from the fact that we do have people from a bit of a range of industries. Is there maybe one particular issue that is particularly pressing in your current industry or field, and something that requires a unique engineering challenge that people are kind of working on? Or maybe something that you've come across in your own careers that you found a particularly interesting challenge to work through.
I can offer one. Janelle had mentioned kind of programming and automating things, and she's talking about in her own career, she's trying to get the ATCO system a little more automated and current in terms of technology. I think right now one of the big challenges is that technology is leaping so fast that the industry can't actually keep up with that leap. And there's a number of aspects to that. One, it's just the people doing the work haven't had the training, don't have the knowledge, don't have the skills to do it. Financially, making the investments to do that work is a challenge. And then the technology itself is changing quite rapidly. And so you start a project and you pick this piece of equipment, and within 2 years, when you kind of implement this project, there's a whole new suite of devices that probably would have been better, but you've already designed something and invested in this other piece of equipment that is already starting to become obsolete. So I think the challenge, and that really goes to what Mike talked about earlier, in that you have budget constraints, you have schedule constraints. There's a number of different aspects that challenge you. But I think the great challenge that we have as engineers is trying to bridge that gap between where the industry is and where the technology is, and that's the really exciting part, is finding a solution that works for whether it's your client or whether it's the ATCO, it's your own company. That's the exciting part, is finding a solution that works with all of those different things, because they pull you in different directions. Everyone pulls in a different direction. And if you can find that, sweet spot, there'll be bumps for sure. But if you can kind of find that sweet spot, you'll finish that job, and you'll be like, that's what makes it exciting. And that's what keeps you kind of fighting through those bumps sometimes.
More to elaborate more from what Kari's speaking about is, when I graduated, I'd say the baby boomers were there, and they had a set ways of doing something. And I'd say with the newer technology, everybody's looking at a screen. Back then people were looking at drawings and looking at things they can see and touch. And in this era that we're in, it's just everything is digital. Even the way that I've done some testing and commissioning. Even the things that I was taught maybe when I was at ATCO is even somewhat outdated, and without playing with it myself, and staying on top of it. So now try convincing some stakeholder or somebody that they've done something probably 20 to 30 years that same way, and you happen to learn it. But the actual gratification from a job is to walk away from a job well done, and where people really know what you've built, and they've accepted it, and they've shown their gratitude, and you've kind of hit the thing on the nail, like and you bridge the gaps between kind of old and new to make something kind of meet in the middle. And that's what we engineers do. We balance the act of every aspect and try to make the best of it. So
it's very rare you come up with a technical solution. That is you almost never implement that. It's like Mike says, it's somewhere in between, and that is the fun part for sure.
Yeah, I find that really interesting, and a challenge that's not only hitting engineering, but I think everywhere across the world. And engineers do have a particularly good opportunity to be able to bridge that gap. I think that's a really excellent point. I remember walking into the office on my co-op last summer and seeing the paper PO system and almost losing my mind at how absurd it was trying to keep track of everything. And I'm like, man, I can't believe they're still doing it this way. But something as simple as that, up to all the big technical solutions that you all are working on, is incredible. So I guess kind of tying into that, I'm sure you've all been a part of some pretty incredible things as engineers, and that's one of the great things we want to do. So do you have a particularly memorable project that you've been involved in, something that you kind of think back on as part of your career and be like, that was a really cool thing to be a part of, or we came up with a really creative solution to that?
I have a different one, taking that in a different direction. Is whenever someone says memorable project, I think to my E.I.T job, where I ordered a $200,000 control system cabinet, and then it didn't fit through the door of the building. So that's when I think of memorable projects, that's always my one. But we got in eventually. It worked out in the end.
I'll say this, so I'm a husband and a father with two sons, and during the pandemic, your most glorious project may not be at work, actually. So what happened was my laundry machine broke down, and I happened to track down the schematics on the internet, traced out every wire, found the broken wire, spliced it back together, and got the laundry machine working, saved a $600 phone call, got it fixed during the pandemic. And you're not sleeping outside because your wife's unhappy, and you got clean clothes to wear. I would say that was probably one of my most memorable projects for my family to remember me. Then, my kid always says, "Daddy's fixing the laundry machine and it's working again." So I would say that, engineering has taught you how to do something, so that skill can be applied almost anywhere if you choose to use it to your advantage.
Want to jump in on that question?
I had one project, and it wasn't necessarily any particular piece of it. It was an upgrade or expansion, and so it required an entire electrical distribution system for it. And somebody had come to me, one of the electrical engineers in there, and said, you know, we need somebody to go down to Calgary and work with the consulting office to put the system in place. And I was like, I was relatively new. I mean, I'd had a few years experience, but I was like, this is way above anything I could even get close to. And I was like, right away, I was like, no. And then I went home, and it was, I think, probably a couple of weeks later, and I was like, well, I don't know, why not, I guess. I mean, if somebody asked me, somebody must think I can do it. So I ended up doing it. And it was great. It was the first time I really worked with the consulting offices. And so I had a great opportunity to kind of learn their processes and learn how they do it. And, you know, sometimes you get a better appreciation because as an owner's engineer, you get this design sometimes and you go out in the field and it doesn't quite work the way you wanted it to work. And you want to blame it on whoever developed it. But sitting in the office, you start to realize that, okay, they did that because, you know, at my end, we didn't get them the answer until it was 4 weeks after when they needed the information. And so they had to push it through in order to get, you know, we had to be able to procure material and do that. So I learned a ton of different aspects of the project, and then got to go back home and we got to put it in service it. And like Mike said, the commissioning side of it, you got to, you know, see what you told them to do on paper, and then you got to go out into the field and see how it got implemented. And some of those things worked really well. Some of them didn't work well. They didn't fit through the door. And but at the end of it all, you know, everybody's like, hey, Kari, you know, that was a good job. I implemented a few different processes. And, you know, same thing. We had a ton of contractors up there, a lot of operations. My network was, you know, expanded massively just by doing that one project. And you know, I'll get on a call with somebody and be like, you know, my name's Gary, and they're like, oh yeah, I worked with you, and I'm like, I have no idea who that person is, but it's just it's amazing. So again, I think, you know, just put yourself out there, do the best that you can, and in most situations, if you do the best that you can and you ask the questions and you ask the help when you need it, good things happen.
Yeah, my most memorable project is not glorious by any means. I had to install a heater on a roof, which sounds really simple, but the roof was in a craneway for a crane that literally never got shut down because it was critical to production. So they usually gave me about a couple hours notice. So it was just a nightmare trying to get the pipe fitters and the electricians and the millwrights and everyone ready to go in a couple hours to install a heater. So it felt like a never-ending project, and it was just super memorable. I don't know if I've ever been as happy to finish a project before. I like went out to dinner to celebrate. I was so excited. So.
That's great to hear. Really cool projects for everybody. Good diversity there. Really glad to see that. Maybe we'll toss it to Willow here, but first of all, for anybody, we're kind of approaching the end of the session. So for anybody who has any last questions, for anybody still around in the chat, feel free to throw those in there and we're good to go. But I'll toss it over to Willow for any questions that we have in the chat.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat. So what kinds of opportunities are there in the power engineering field right now?
I'll take a stab at that one. So the power engineering field, there's actually, even though it's, you know, you're called an electrical engineer, there's quite a number of fields. You become either, you know, a substation engineer, which, you know, you're speccing equipment, and this equipment can be, you know, very difficult. There's plenty of, IEEE standards out there. You could become a system studies engineer where you're running models and trying to look at the overall system impact study. You could be a designer at kind of like what I would be doing at a protection and control level. And you mix in different industries such as the green energy, oil and gas, and utilities or industrial into this mix, and then all of a sudden you now have to look at, let's say, high voltage, medium voltage, low voltage, and then expand that out another 10 more times from different vendors, and then now knowing, oh, this vendor has this that's different from this, and my client would really benefit from that. So you first gotta have to figure out what do you really like to do. Do you like validating something? Do you like testing and commissioning, or do you like designing, or do you like simulating? And then you can maybe start from there, because as part of the as EITs, I recommend people, they try a job, and if they don't like it, definitely try as many as you can, and then you find the right one. Even in power field, they can get into telecom. You can get into microwave, fiber networks, and control systems like SCADA and PLC. It's really quite endless, but it's just really how you apply yourself.
I think to touch on that is in terms of the opportunities that are there, I think Alberta is one of the, is a great place to be because we are in a deregulated market. So not only are you dealing with utilities, you're dealing with, independent power producers, and now you have the green industry. So I think that's kind of where Mike and I play most of the time. And it's been good for me, for sure, for the last 20 some years. So I don't see it changing significantly. Obviously, things are a little bit challenging at this given point, but a lot of the infrastructure we have as well is starting to, a lot of electrical is kind of 30 to 40 years. You start to, of the big stuff, you want to start changing it out. And we have a lot of that around us that's there. So that's a big part of continuous development and growth, and play a part of that. So I think there's still lots of opportunities there.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for answering that question. I have a little bit of a question that I think might be slightly different for each panelist, so I'd look forward to hearing your thoughts. What was one kind of skill that you've had to learn in your time after university that you never really thought you would need to know? You maybe weren't prepared for it, but something that... Whoever wants to take that, or I could just pick someone.
I'll go first. So, engineering, we're really good at math and science, and really go like, communication, or soft skills, conflict resolution. Who loves getting into an argument? Especially a non-technical argument. There's no right answer. I think one thing that engineering has not has taught people is people are not like an equation where it's x plus y plus this, and then you get an answer. You apply this same technique to the same person, you'll eventually figure them out. And I find in any job that university has not prepared people to do conflict resolution, or how to communicate and deal with emotion and have emotional intelligence. And you could be the most brightest engineer, you can have the best solutions, but if you cannot communicate it and get it in a way that people accept it, it's like talent wasted. Yeah.
For me, I've kind of said since COVID's been introduced that this is like the engineer's disease, or that we kind of created it, because many of us like to stay in our bubble and stay at home. So making everybody else do the same thing and stay out of our bubble is maybe a good thing. So for me, networking was something I didn't realize would be so important. It's probably not something I focused on when I was in university, and still to this day, it's something that challenges me. And so, yeah, any opportunity to kind of network and get comfortable with that process is good. And it certainly wasn't something that I thought would be as important as it is.
Sort of on the same page, but like learning how to push yourself outside your comfort zone, I guess, for either technical or social or soft skills. Like, I know if I was in Sahar's position, I would not be doing this if I was like at that stage of my career, just because I know me then, and that this was not be something I would do. And it definitely, it took me time to get to this, being able to do this.
For me, I think since graduating, I've had a really big, or I've realized how important personal growth is as compared to like technical growth, if that makes sense. So, like learning how to keep myself motivated and make personal goals for myself, whether that be fitness or like learning things on the side or practicing meditation or all the different things that you can do. I've realized how important that can be just for your own well-being.
Particularly important one for everybody who's still in university, because it's so easy to lose that balance, especially when you're always at home and the lines between school and your personal life tend to blur. But no, that's really great. So we're coming towards the end of our time here. So I think what I'll do is just to anybody who wants to answer it, if there's like one last piece of advice that you want to leave everybody in the room here with, we got people from we got students, we've got new EITs, we've got everything. So I don't know if there's anything in particular that you didn't get to say earlier that you might want to leave everyone with. I'll give anyone who wants to jump in on that the opportunity to do that.
I think just get out there, just continually learn, continually try your best, and just be honest to yourself. And depending who you are, work isn't necessarily life. It's okay if you don't find something, or if it's okay if you end up in a job that just pays for your life outside of work. You don't have to be, especially like with how widespread like social media and just media coverage all over the world is. You see all these people on platforms in the news, and it's like, oh wow, they're a superhero of this industry, and I've been doing my job for 10 years, and this is the only place I'm at, and like, so what? You get what are your goals? What's important to you? If you want to be a superhero of the industry, like concentrate on that. If you like, for me, it's like I value being home on time after work and having family time, and that's what's important to me. And I found a job that I can do that, and I worked my way to a position where I've really come to enjoy it. And yeah.
I would say for me, I've always liked building things, so I found what I like. I like to tinker. That's what my wife says. You like to tink, and then sometimes she says you're also thinking at the same time. But I do like to tinker, and finding something a job that allows you to have your hobbies, grow yourself professionally, and if your job happens to be the same thing where you get to play with something and make something work, I never really did like labs in university until maybe with the capstone project, and you got to see something that you program, you make work. And even to this day, whether it's just building something, learning woodworking skills, or me tuning my own road bike for, hopefully I could do a triathlon again. That's just something that I'd say you never should lose sight of. What you enjoyed as a childhood probably will still play an influence, and if you can find a job that happens to match that, and my ability to do that with labs at the BBA office also kind of keeps me engaged, and I can stay with the times. And at the end of the day, I get to build something and test something that I designed and make it work, and then show the value.
My piece of advice would probably be kind of along the lines of what Janelle was saying. One thing that I noticed, kind of, there's like a culture in engineering of like trying to push yourself to like get the best grades and push yourself to the limit and get the best job and make a lot of money and all these sort of ideas that get perpetuated. So I would just say consider your happiness. It's pretty important. It's basically what all of us are striving to do, is just to be happy in life. So don't let that fall to the wayside.
For me, I think it is recognizing that Janelle touched on it earlier, is your life will change. And as you change, that might mean your career and your needs and your desires from your career changes. And so just be true to yourself, understand what it is that you like and you want to be doing. And it's always, change is a good thing, and sometimes it's necessary. So just be open to opportunities and, figure out how you can contribute, and just like no opportunity is too big or too small. You can gain something from anything, and just make sure that your career is supporting what your overall life goals are.
Thank you so much. I think that's a really good way to end off. So on behalf of NGAC and the ESS, thank you everybody for joining us here in our session today. Thank you to Willow for moderating the chat, and especially thank you to our panelists for taking the time to share your wisdom with us. I know I personally learned a lot. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So thank you all once again. The hop-in session is open for another 36 minutes. So for anybody who wants to jump into the networking session, that is on your left taskbar there. Additionally, the expo contains a lot of good info on different organizations and stuff around University of Alberta engineering. So feel free to look at that. But other than that, thank you once again, and have a good rest of your night. Good luck to everybody out there looking for jobs. Good luck with school. Good luck with work. Good luck with everything. Thanks, everyone.